I never imagined my perfect life could shatter with a single discovery. It started on a quiet Sunday morning in our suburban home. The California sun streamed through our bathroom window, catching something metallic on the counter. A small round blister pack, its silver foil glinting in the light. I frowned, picking it up and turning it over in my hands. After 7 years of marriage to Sarah, I knew every product in our house. This wasn't one of them. My tech executive brain kicked into analytical mode as I opened the medicine cabinet. Nothing similar there. I pulled open Sarah's makeup drawer, methodically searching through her collection of expensive cosmetics. Behind a row of half-empty perfume bottles, I found what I was looking for. A small cardboard package that made my heart stop. Birth control pills. My hand started trembling as I stared at the prescription date. 2 weeks ago. The thing is, I'd had a vasectomy 3 years ago, right after Lucas was born. We'd agreed we were done having kids. Sophie was already 2 then, and our family felt complete. Sarah had been there through the whole process, holding my hand in the doctor's office. We hadn't needed any form of contraception since. Down the hall, I could hear Sophie and Lucas playing in the living room. Their laughter, usually a source of joy, now felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I carefully placed everything back exactly as I'd found it. Years of managing tech projects had taught me the value of careful observation and strategic planning. Those skills were about to become very personal. That night, I lay awake beside Sarah, watching her peaceful sleep. Her blonde hair spread across the pillow, her face serene. How many lies were hidden behind that beautiful facade? The next morning, I dropped Sophie off at her private school. Her kindergarten teacher smiled and waved as my little girl skipped inside. Lucas was next, his preschool just a few blocks away. He hugged me tight, his small arms around my neck. "Love you, Daddy." I held him a moment longer than usual, fighting back emotions I couldn't show. Instead of heading to my office in Silicon Valley, I drove to Best Buy. Technology had always been my ally. Now it would help me uncover the truth. I purchased a sophisticated home security system, high-definition cameras with night vision and audio capabilities. The sales pitch was easy, recent break-ins in the neighborhood. Sarah wouldn't question it. That evening, I announced the security upgrade over dinner. "Better safe than sorry," I said, watching her reaction carefully. She barely looked up from her phone. "Sounds good, honey. The Petersons got one last month." I noticed how she angled her phone away from me, a new habit I hadn't paid attention to before. The next few days were a blur of careful preparation. I installed cameras in strategic locations throughout the house. Living room, kitchen, foyer. Each one care. Fully concealed, but with perfect sight lines. The feed went directly to my private cloud server. Only I had access. During my lunch breaks, I researched DNA testing services. Found one with an impeccable reputation for accuracy and discretion. The sample collection was easier than I expected. A few strands of hair from each child's brush. Cheek swabs while pretending to clean their faces after breakfast. I created a separate email account for the results. Used a VPN to cover my digital tracks. Sarah had no idea I could be this methodical. She saw the easygoing tech exec who came home with silly stories about coding mishaps, not the man who'd built his career on attention to detail and strategic thinking. 1 week after finding the pills, I made my first strategic move. "The Singapore project needs attention," I told Sarah over morning coffee. "I'll be working late most nights this month." She nodded, tapping away at her phone. "That's fine. I've got plenty to keep me busy at work too." "I bet you do," I thought, watching her perfectly manicured nails dance across the screen. Instead of staying late at the office, I parked in a nearby lot, opened my laptop, and connected to the home security feed. The first few nights showed nothing unusual. Sarah coming home, helping with homework, making dinner. Normal routines that used to comfort me. Now they felt like scenes from a play. Then came Thursday night. I watched as Sarah paced the living room, phone pressed to her ear. The camera's audio picked up her voice, low and intimate. David, we need to be careful. David Parker, her boss at the marketing firm, the man who'd given a speech at our last Christmas party about family values. The timing isn't right yet, she continued. Michael's been home more lately with his hybrid work schedule. My name in her mouth felt like poison. I watched her sink into our leather couch, the one we'd picked out together at Restoration Hardware. She laughed softly, twirling her hair, a gesture I used to find endearing. I know. I miss you too. The words hit me like physical blows. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking with rage. But I forced myself to stay calm, to think strategically. The DNA results would arrive soon. I needed to be patient, to gather every piece of evidence. The next morning, I kissed Sarah goodbye like nothing was wrong. Watch her drive off in her white Tesla. Another day of pretending. Another day of gathering proof. I didn't know then that the worst revelation was yet to come. That watching Sarah's betrayal unfold was only the beginning. The real shock would arrive in my inbox 3 days later. A simple email that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. The DNA results were in. With trembling fingers, I opened the attachment. Probability of paternity, 0%. For both children, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Sophie's drawings on the fridge. Lou, Cass's Little League photos. All the memories suddenly felt like lies. I stared at my computer screen until the words blurred. 6 years of Sophie's bedtime stories. For years of Lucas's morning cuddles. All built on a foundation of deception. That night, I drove to the beach instead of going home. Sat in my car watching the Pacific waves crash against the shore. The same beach where I'd proposed to Sarah. Where we'd taken Sophie for her first steps. Where Lucas had built his first sandcastle. Every happy memory now tasted like ash. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Not to Sarah, not to my family, but to Jennifer Hayes, the best divorce attorney in Northern California, known for handling high-profile tech divorces with brutal efficiency. Her office agreed to see me first thing tomorrow. I spent that night in a hotel. Told Sarah I had an early meeting in San Francisco. Another lie to cover my investigation of her lies. The irony wasn't lost on me. Morning found me in Jennifer's downtown office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the bay. She listened without interruption as I laid out my evidence. The birth control pills, the surveillance footage, the DNA results. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes sparked with interest. You've been thorough, she said, reviewing my documentation. Most clients come to me with suspicions. You've brought proof. She pulled out a legal pad. Now let's talk strategy. For the next 2 hours, we mapped out a plan. Every asset would need to be documented. Every conversation recorded. Every movement tracked. Don't confront her yet, Jennifer advised. We need to protect your assets first. What about the children? I asked. The question felt like glass in my throat. Jennifer's expression softened slightly. Legally, you've been their father for years. But given the DNA results and the circumstances, we can petition for complete separation. Complete separation. The words echoed in my head all the way back to the office. Back to pretending everything was normal. Back to watching my life unravel in slow motion. That evening, I hugged Sophie and Lucas extra tight, wondering if they'd remember these hugs once everything fell apart. Wondering if they already knew David as more than mommy's boss. The thought made me sick, but I had to keep playing my part. Had to maintain the facade while Jennifer built our case. The next few weeks were an exercise in self-control. Every morning, I kissed Sarah goodbye. Every evening, I pretended not to notice her secret phone calls. I watched through the cameras as she moved through her house. Watched her tell the children stories about their special friend David. Watched her build a web of lies so intricate it took my breath away. And all the while, I gathered evidence. Bank statements showing hidden transfers. Hotel receipts found in her car. Screenshots of messages between her and David. Each piece of evidence another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Jennifer's team worked quietly in the background, protecting assets, documenting everything, building an airtight case. I was no longer just Michael Anderson, loving husband and father. I was a man preparing for war. A war Sarah didn't even know was coming. But soon she would. Soon everyone would know the truth. And our perfect Silicon Valley life would crumble like a house of cards. The stage was set. The evidence gathered. Now it was just a matter of timing. And timing, as any tech executive knows, is everything. The moment everything changed came on a crisp November morning. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Sarah was hosting her annual pre-holiday brunch. Our house filled with her friends from the marketing firm, their husbands making small talk about the NFL season, children running through the perfectly decorated rooms. I watched it all like a scene from someone else's life. Then I saw him walk in. David Parker, tall, confident, expensive watch glinting on his wrist. He gave Sarah a casual hug that lasted a second too long. His wife, Amy, wasn't with him. "She's not feeling well," he explained to the group. I knew better. They were in the middle of a messy divorce, something Sarah had conveniently forgotten to mention. I nursed my coffee, playing my role perfectly. The successful tech executive, the devoted husband, the proud father, all while watching Sarah and David's subtle glances, their careful distance that felt too rehearsed. Sophie ran up to David with a familiarity that made my jaw clench. "Uncle David," she squealed, hugging his legs. He picked her up with practiced ease. The same blue eyes, the same dimpled smile. How had I never noticed before? Lucas followed his sister, arms raised for his own hug. I gripped my coffee mug so hard I thought it might shatter. Jennifer's words echoed in my head. "Wait for the right moment. Let them get comfortable. Let them make mistakes." The brunch dragged on for hours. Small talk about school districts and property values. Discussion of holiday plans and winter vacations. I watched Sarah work the room, her perfect hostess smile never wavering, until she thought no one was looking. Then her eyes would find David, quick glances loaded with meaning. I excused myself to my home office, opened my laptop to check the security feeds, rewound to earlier that morning, before the guests arrived. Sarah on her phone in the kitchen. "Everything's fine, David. Michael doesn't suspect a thing. The transfer went through yesterday. Once the holidays are over, we can move forward with the plan." I closed the laptop, checked my watch. Right on schedule. The doorbell rang again. This time I knew who it was. Amy Parker stood on our doorstep, David's soon-to-be ex-wife. Her timing was perfect, just as Jennifer had planned. The conversation in the living room. M died. Sarah's perfect hostess smile froze. David's face went pale. Amy walked in like an avenging angel, designer handbag clutched like a weapon. "David," she said sweetly. I was feeling better, so I thought I'd join the party. The tension in the room could have been cut with a knife. I stepped forward, playing my part. "Amy, welcome. Can I get you some coffee?" She smiled, but her eyes were steel. "Actually, I have something to share with everyone." From her bag, she pulled out a stack of papers. Documents Jennifer had helped her obtain. Bank statements, hotel receipts, photos from private investigators. I thought all our friends should know the truth. The room went silent. Sarah's friends stopped mid-conversation, their husbands suddenly very interested in their phones. David took a step toward Amy. "This isn't the place, Dash." "Oh, but it is." Amy cut him off. She turned to address the room. "My husband and Sarah have been having an affair. For years." The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah's face went white. "Amy, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly, Dash." "Oh, I'm thinking very clearly," Amy replied. She turned to me. "Michael, I'm so sorry, but you deserve to know." I met her eyes, nodded slowly. "I already do." The room went completely still. Sarah's head snapped toward me, her perfect mask cracking. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the DNA test results. Sophie and Lucas aren't mine. My voice was steady, controlled. They're David's. The gasps were audible. Sarah's best friend covered her mouth in shock. David looked like he might be sick. Sarah took a step toward me. Michael, I can explain Dash. Can you explain the birth control pills? The secret phone calls? The money you've been transferring to your private account? Each question like a bullet, each one finding its mark. How long? I asked. Not that I needed to. I had all the proof, but I wanted to hear her say it. Sarah's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape, finding none. 7 years, she whispered, since before Sophie was born. The room erupted in whispers. Amy smiled grimly, her part in this drama complete. I turned to our guests. I think it's time for everyone to leave. They couldn't get out fast enough, grabbing their coats and children, practically running for their cars. Tomorrow, the story would be all over Silicon Valley. The perfect power couple's perfect lie exposed. But I didn't care about that now. I watched as David tried to follow the crowd. Not you, I said. You're staying. We all need to talk. Sophie and Lucas were upstairs, blissfully unaware in their playroom. The nanny pre-warned, keeping them occupied. In the living room, the four of us sat. Sarah and David on one couch, Amy and I on the other, the battle lines drawn. Jennifer's careful planning had paid off. Every detail orchestrated for maximum impact. Now came the hard part. The confrontation we'd been preparing for. The truth that would change everything. And somewhere in our perfect house, in our perfect neighborhood, the sound of children laughing floated down, innocent of the storm about to break, of the lives about to shatter, of the truth that couldn't be hidden anymore. The endgame had begun, and there was no going back. The silence in our living room felt like a physical weight. Sarah spoke first, her voice trembling. How long have you known? I leaned back, suddenly tired of all the pretense. Long enough to document everything. Every lie, every secret meeting, every dollar you've hidden. David shifted uncomfortably in his expensive suit. Michael, we never meant Dash to get caught. I cut him off. Or to destroy 2 families? Amy's laugh was bitter beside me. They meant all of it, she said. Every calculated move. I pulled out my phone again, played the recording from last week. Sarah's voice filled the room, planning their future, discussing how to break it to the children, how to minimize the financial impact. David's face went ashen. Sarah's perfect composure cracked completely. You've been spying on me? No, Sarah. I've been protecting myself. I nodded to Amy, who opened her briefcase. Out came the legal documents, prepared by Jennifer, ready for signatures. You have 2 choices, I said. We do this the easy way or the hard way. Sarah's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Option 1. You both sign these papers. Full financial disclosure. Clean break. No castigates. David reached for the documents. Sarah grabbed his arm. Don't you dare Dash. It's over, Sarah, he said quietly. We lost. I continued, my voice steady. Option 2. We go to court. Every detail becomes public record. Every secret exposed. Your careers, your reputations, everything gone. The threat hung in the air. Sarah's hands were shaking now. The children Dash will know the truth eventually. I finished. But how they learn it is up to you. Amy spoke up, her voice ice cold. David, think about your other family. Your real wife. Your legitimate children. He flinched at her words. Good. Let him feel some pain. Sarah stood up suddenly. I need to think. I need to talk to my lawyer. Your lawyer already knows, I said. Jennifer Hayes called them this morning. Her face went white. Jennifer's reputation preceded her. You hired the shark? I smiled without humor. Actually, She offered to take the case. Said it was too good to pass up. David was already reaching for a pen, his business sense finally kicking in, cutting his losses. Sarah watched him sign with disbelief. David, what are you doing? Saving what's left of my life, he muttered. She sank back onto the couch. Defeated. Broken. Just like she'd planned to leave me. The next hour was a blur of signatures. Initial here. Date there. Amy. S. lawyer on speakerphone. Jennifer's associate taking notes. When it was done, David stood up, straightened his tie. The children are no longer your concern. I cut him off. The agreement is clear. He nodded once. Left without looking back. Amy followed, her revenge complete, leaving me alone with Sarah, the woman I'd loved, the mother of children who weren't mine, the architect of 7 years of lies. What happens now? She whispered. Now you pack a bag. The divorce papers will be filed tomorrow. You have 1 hour to leave. But Sophie and Lucas will stay here tonight. We'll tell them tomorrow. Together. One last act of parenting. She started to cry then. Real tears this time. Not the calculated ones I'd seen before. I did love you, she said. Once. No. Iraplia. You loved what I represented. Security. Status. A cover for your real life. She had no answer for that. An hour later, she was gone. Her Tesla pulling out of our driveway. Maybe for the last time. I walked upstairs to the playroom. Sophie was drawing. Lucas playing with his trains. They looked up and smiled. Where's Mommy? Sophie asked. She had to go to work. I lied. One last lie to protect them. Tomorrow would be soon enough for truth. That night, I lay in our bed. Our empty bed. Listening to the quiet house. Thinking about the future. It wouldn't be easy. There would be questions. Tears. Confusion. But there would also be truth. Finally truth. 3 months later, I stood in my new apartment. Downtown San Francisco. Views of the bay. Sophie and Lucas visiting on weekends. They were adjusting, slowly. Sarah had moved in with David. His divorce from Amy finalized. Their perfect plan achieved. But at what cost? I looked at my phone. A text from Jennifer. The final settlement approved. It was really over. I walked to the window. Watched the sunset over the Golden Gate. Somewhere in the city, Sarah and David were starting their new life. Their secret finally in the open. Their deception no longer hidden. But I was free. Free from lies. Free from pretense. Free to begin again. Sophie and Lucas would always be my children. In my heart, if not in my DNA. And maybe someday they'd understand. Why truth matters. Why lies destroy. Why sometimes the hardest path is the right one. For now, I had peace. And that was enough. The California sun set over the bay, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A new day would dawn tomorrow, and I would face it, stronger, wiser, free, and